right. I am the Director of Research in the Kent School District. I help co-lead this TUG with Tashawn Christie, who's the Executive Director of Organizational Effectiveness here in Kent. And we get together about every 3 months or so and talk about what's new in Tableau and how we're using it in our districts. And welcome, everybody. This is set up as a regular Zoom meeting, so we'll have some time for some questions and comments. You'll be able to unmute yourself and ask those questions and go through all of that. Just a brief agenda here. We're going to do a quick welcome and introductions. There's kind of a lot of us, so we won't go all the way around, but we'll have an opportunity to say who's here. We are going to have a presentation about student engagement data and dashboards from Kent School District. It'll be Lizzie Barker and Nick Teal, who are the two data analysts on the research team. And then from Highline Public Schools, Robbie Wrigley will be going through what they've been working on. The next piece will be around the use of non-traditional data sources. This is really just set up to be a discussion and a conversation about what people are doing and what might be possible. And just to set the stage and get your wheels turning, when I think of non-traditional data in our context, I'm kind of thinking of things that aren't student data, like beyond that attendance, behavior, grades, that day-to-day. So, it could still be school district data. Maybe it's HR data. Maybe it's data from your maintenance system, or maybe it's census data and completely outside. So just be thinking about that. And then we'll do some closing and next steps and have a fun little quiz competition at the end. So stay tuned for that. And to get us started, we're going to use Menti. So you can use it on your phone, or you can go open up a web browser, enter the code that's at that bottom of the slide, and just do a quick introduction of yourself with your name, district title, and what you're currently working on in Tableau, or what you would like to be working on. Because I know not everybody here is an active Tableau user, which, everybody's at a different spot. So I'm just thinking about that. I'm going to switch my screen so we can see what people are saying. At the end of this, I'll be downloading everything that we use Menti for too, so you can go back and see who was here, and we're going to use it for some different questions. So it looks like we have some people that are in different spaces, like well into using Tableau, trying some new things around COVID. Some people that are looking to just get started and see what's possible here. Looks like we have a couple people that haven't responded, but good mix of people. We have a couple minutes. We're ahead of schedule. If anybody's really passionate and has something they want to share that they're working on real quick or do an introduction. Or we can move right into the meat of this thing.
I just want to say hi to Sheila, who I haven't seen in a while. We sit next to each other, but she's been away and at home. This is the first time I've seen you in a month.
This is
back next week. I'll be back next week.
Like in some ways, this is how we get to see our colleagues and teammates over the past few months. All right. Well, I will keep us moving. And like I said, I'll post this later so we know who was in here and you know who you might be able to reach out to for if you have questions or comments. So the first thing that we're going to talk about that came as a result of the last survey we sent out to the group about what everybody was interested in was around student engagement, which is timely from the perspective of COVID, but also something that we continue to ask about even when we're in the classroom. So Kent is going to share some of the work that we've been doing in that area and the data sources that we have access to, what the limitations are around that. And then we're going to get a different look and take on engagement from some work that Highline's been doing. So I was told that Nick or Lizzie, I don't know which one of you is sharing, but you should have the ability to do that and take it over from me. So.
Yeah, I'll be sharing. So I just start?
Yep, it should just overtake it from me. That's what I was told.
Cool. Gotten so used to using Teams that I have to get used to using Zoom again. All right, can we see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so this is great. This is our first round of our student engagement. Well, first draft of our student engagement dashboard, which we have kind of titled so that it is within the context of COVID and the remote learning that our district's been doing. We've been trying to change up the style of our dashboards. So this will probably look different than somehow like some of our dashboards have in the past that we've shared. I know Nick shared some in the past. By adding more narration into our dashboard. So we have like an introductory page that gives some context for research for different topics that we're trying to tackle in the dashboard and trying to contextualize it for our district. So these first couple of boxes are thinking more conceptually about what student engagement is. So some of a broader definition for what student engagement would look like. With a thought that we can maybe evolve this dashboard into some other, using some other metrics later on after remote learning has ended, when eventually that happens. And so we want to kind of root our questions in this overarching question about engagement rather than a specific one about attendance or remote learning. So then we started to get into some of our indicators. So some of these boxes down here really show specifically like the big focus of the dashboard will be on attendance as this kind of first step in establishing what engagement is. And that is really here to kind of give us a foundation or a place to start, recognizing that it's just a beginning, and just because it's students in school or attending doesn't necessarily mean that they're fully engaged. But when we first started this dashboard, that was a hard enough question to kind of answer to begin with. We'll talk about why in a second. So that's really the focus of this first iteration of the dashboard, is to look at attendance. And then we also have some data from a survey that we did in the fall that specifically speaks to engagement and how some students responded to remote learning early in the school year. So we also have like this little box in here too that includes our research references a little interactivity. Some of these big numbers have like a viz that will show attendance broken out by grade level as well. Then our second page or second dashboard is focusing on some of those metrics. So we do have a couple sections for attendance. Since we're remote, we are using synchronous and asynchronous attendance, which I think Nick can probably speak a little bit more to how we calculated asynchronous attendance or tackled that, because it's a little bit sticky using our system, but we've gotten this information fed in through Skyward. So we have a couple of charts here that go over the synchronous. So that's the live instruction that students are engaging in through Microsoft Teams. And then down here, we have a similar setup for asynchronous attendance, which Nick, do you want to talk about how we came up with those numbers?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not exactly sure how all the other districts are using it, but we're a Skyward district, and we created some new attendance codes to try to track students who are still completing their classwork, but they aren't participating in the live instruction that's at 10 a.m. or 11 or like at that specific time slot, right? So there are limitations to our system. So for example, we have this code that we created, which is called like a queue. You're not absent. It's not a tardy. It's not when you're entering attendance, a teacher would like after the fact put a queue in there to show that they were that they did their classwork, but not during live instruction. One of the limitations that we have is that hypothetically speaking, someone could be partially there for live instruction and then like leave and then do the rest of it asynchronously. And how we kind of as a district decided to handle that was by saying like, if you had any live instruction during that time frame, you were live. And then but the only way that you would be considered asynchronous is if you were purely asynchronous during that time period. But for like a secondary school, you have multiple periods a day, so it's a little bit easier for you to have n period of asynchronous from time to time. So at the start of quarantine or the stay at home this fall, we were pretty curious as to like how many kids are even using this. So even as of now, like halfway through the school year, less than half of our students have even done asynchronous have had a record of asynchronous put into Skyward, so that's where that 42% comes in. That does not mean that 42% of time has been spent in asynchronous learning. That means 42% of our kids have done asynchronous that's been recorded once, at least once. And you can see if you look at our list of schools, you got Kent Lake Middle School, Kent Meridian. It's all the secondary schools are really the schools that are like using this most, because like in elementary, like if they're live at all during the day, then they're considered live. So from that technicality standpoint, we just don't have a system to capture these partial live, partial asynchronous days. So then so it's like, okay, so these questions are like, who's doing it at least once? Do you have kids who are doing a lot of asynchronous? So instead of attendance, right, like presence, which kids have a lot of asynchronouses? For us, our code is Q. So what kids have 10% of their time being Qs? And that's where that 333 number comes from. And if you mouse over that, you see it's actually, although our high schools have a really high rate of people using it at least once, the kids who are doing asynchronous all the time, which all the time being more than 10%, are mostly our elementary schoolers. So it's kind of interesting. So that's, yeah, and we totally had to redo how we calculate attendance this year. I'm sure you guys had to, do it the same way to account for all these fun little things that we have to account for. Yeah, and I hope I explained decently what asynchronous attendance means in Kent. Do you have any corrections for me, Lizzie?
Not that I can think of. Yeah, I know it's become like kind of a difficult process for us to explain too sometimes. So because of the way that it's calculated and we're trying to think about it. We also, like, for context, had put down at least once and 10%, which might seem like kind of low numbers because at the beginning of the year it seemed really low when we were calculating it. And I think part of that is also just, for us, how we've set that standard for what counts as live instruction attendance versus asynchronous, like what Nick was talking about. So this dashboard also has some information for some of the tools that we're using for remote learning. So we use Microsoft Teams for our live instruction. So we have some information in here about the audio time that students are spending in Teams. And we decided to focus on audio time as opposed to video because we recognize that some students could be turning off their videos during live instruction. And we didn't want to mix up any of that information or lose some of that time in class just because they were using the audio function. But it also doesn't like differentiate between the time that they've spent in audio total and the time that is during a class period. So we might be kind of catching more time that they're spending in Teams in this data than what they're actually doing in the class itself. So that's another limitation that we have in the Teams data right now. We also use Canvas. So we have been digging into some of our Canvas reports slowly, but we've been able to at least pull out reports about how recently students have been logging in. So this one, this section down here just includes last logins for students and breaks it out by school so that we can see how many schools and school levels are really using Canvas, at least recently. So this was pulled from earlier this week. A report was pulled from earlier this week, but we've set it back a couple of weeks so we can get kind of a better sense, especially as we were heading into the end of the semester here this past week. And then at the bottom here, we have some results from a survey that students and parents completed earlier in the semester. So this was from the fall. So this data is a little bit old. We're going to add in some results from another survey that just completed this week. So we just haven't quite been able to update that yet. But it's just got some sentiments about engagement, especially early on in the remote learning process. Okay, so I know there's a lot of information on here that we kind of threw at you all, but we are really interested in hearing about what approaches that you all are taking in your districts if you're talking about engagement or attendance or some of these metrics that we've looked at, or any thoughts that you might have or feedback you might have for us on how we've decided to tackle this so far. And I know if I was going too fast through any of those parts, that I can go back and show different parts of the dashboard too.
There's a question in the chat here about the number of hours on Canvas. I recommend including the metric of time and hours in the question and know what the scope is. We were looking at something the other day where we were like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense anymore. I think we were looking at number of hours and yeah, so keeping in mind what you're looking at. Yeah, and if you have any questions that come up as you're thinking about it more, throw them in the chat. Or at the end, if we want to switch over to Highline sharing and can do some more conversation at the end.
Yeah, kind of in the spirit of our next time conversation about some of these conventional data sources. So some of the limitations of the data that we were working with is for the Microsoft Teams, it's not being able to distinguish between class time and then just chatting with their friends, Like there were students who were like for those first couple of weeks, 10 hours a day. And it's like, man, you are a great student, or you're either chatting with your friends a lot. And then for the survey data, that survey data is, we don't attach student IDs to it. It's completely anonymous. So, there could be some maybe future survey, or it could be really cool to look at like attendance combined with, are you engaged or not, like questions like that, but we can really only aggregate it up and look at it at like a school level, right? And as for the question about how often do we pull from Canvas and Teams, once a week, once a month, we do it manually. We have looked into doing the Canvas API, but we haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, and we're also having some more conversations about how to get not just Teams data, but since we're all in Microsoft district, how to get some more data from the Office 365 and the whole suite of tools, and get that in an automated way. Because right now, as I said, it's like kind of as it comes up, like, oh, we should refresh this data. And I don't remember if this came up at the beginning, but we haven't released this dashboard yet. It's still really draft. We've had a couple district level, like high level administrators take a look at it and give some feedback, but it hasn't gone out to schools yet. And it's really at a higher lens right now. So that's one of the things that we're thinking about too, as it goes out. Like, if this was really going to be a tool for the schools, what might need to change versus it being answering some questions at the district and systems level. So very much a work in progress still. All right, do we want to shift over? Robbie, are you ready?
Yeah, I can go for it.
All right.
Let me pull up my correct screen. Can people see?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So we're doing a couple different ways of tracking student engagement. One of them is attendance. We're doing average daily attendance and period attendance. We're also doing grades to try and keep track of that. This way that we're checking student engagement involves student conversations with students. So thanks to IMS for setting this up. We are trying to define it as one-to-one student connection and then spoke to student in the Synergy. We use Synergy as our SIS. We're manually pulling this data as capacity for setting up a SQL is kind of hard right now with everything going on. So I pull it once a month. And some schools are using it with Fidelity. Other schools are using different methods. We had wanted to push it out as a district overall, like everyone uses Synergy, but there's some pushback. So there are other options, but that's why there's some complications later on in the calculations. Then for all of our dashboards, we have an about page that gives some more information on what's in the dashboard, what are the definitions. There's some confidentiality notices because we have teacher level data in here it's the admin view. So like staff admin can see this specifically to see who's communicating with their students, but it gives a brief overview of like what each page is showing. And then there's a reminder that we can only track what's in Synergy and we're not tracking other data for other ways of communication. So we have our first view showing like over time and then just kind of a brief overview of like what the contact categories are and are people actually entering whether or not it's a one-to-one student connection or it's a null because they didn't enter anything. So we're trying to give a motivation to enter stuff by doing that and showing that there's a hierarchy so you can pull out whether or not the outcome under the contact category was to see if, again, they're entering stuff or not. This is pulling, for the graph over time, it's pulling over students enrolled total. That's how we're matching. We're pulling from our demographics query, which has all this information for each student at the student level, 1 row per student per site. So it's on a count distinct of each student. you can see that there is a percent of students with a contact attempt. Again, December 20th and 27th, those weeks we had winter break. So that's why participation is really low. I haven't pulled for January yet. I'll be doing that next week. We wanted to show whether or not they had a contact attempt, just to see if like people are contacting, but they're not reaching the students. And then we show a successful one-to-one connection, which was the contact category of connecting one-to-one, and then an outcome of actually speaking to the student themselves. So that's this page. It's a pretty brief overview. And then you can see the tooltips. They give more in-depth. I layered them over because you can't see both of them at once usually. To try and give more context, we usually try and add more in-depth detail in our tooltips so people can really get a sense of what the data are. And then for our next view, we have it broken out by overall, school level, by race and grade, and then program status. The difficulty of these views is because we have a contact date filter applied, is it only polls when there's a contact date entered. So when we joined it with demographics, not all of them had a contact date because not all students were contacted. The theory was originally that if everyone was going to be using Synergy, then we'd have it out of 100% of students because there would be a contact attempt for each student. But since other people are not using it, it's just going to be the denominators out of contact attempts, not out of total students. So it doesn't give the clearest view of what we wanted to show, but it is showing that like we are reaching some students. So that's good. And then you can see up top how many students received a contact attempt and then how many students are actually enrolled. So we're not doing it quite as much as we'd like to. Again, this was for December though, so we haven't seen what January usage is yet.
Well, and Robbie, we know not all of our schools use this as
Yes.
the tracking method.
Yes. I did have a view for each school level. I mean, each school by school, but I decided not to include that because some of the schools are really low because not everyone's using it.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So you said that you have like your demographics query, which is like a 1 row per kid per student per building type of thing. And then you also have your I don't know if this is coming out as an Excel file or whatever it is that you're downloading once a week. Are you doing a join or the data noodle to combine them? Because I
doing a join in Tableau Prep.
Okay.
We have Tableau Prep, so that's how I'm joining them together.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I don't know, because the problem that you said about the denominator only being out of people who were attempted, I feel like there has to be some way of doing like a left join or a data noodle or something to get around that. But it's hard for me to say without actually seeing it, you know?
Yeah.
Like I can speculate.
That would actually be something good to explore. We can take notes of that and look into that later. And then we did the teacher view. So overview by staff, I blurred out who's actually contacting students, but you can filter down to school. We had a request to look at it by house. So we have a filter for house up top. And then we have it broken out by like, of these teachers or staff members, what contact category is it? And so you can see some of them, like it's about attendance, or some of them it's two-way family communication. And then on the left-hand side, it should be one-to-one connection. We don't really have as many. It's a lot of nulls. So I think the purpose of this dashboard when we first started it was to get like people's attention and be like, hey, you can look at these data this way. So you should use it because then you can track things. But yeah, that's kind of where we are going with it. We have a select correspondence language. So you can see like, are we reaching students whose primary language or correspondence language is something other than English? So kind of trying to get that. We have them on all of the dashboards too. That is pretty much the presentation that I've prepared, but does anyone have any questions, any thoughts, any suggestions? Because we're like open to suggestions as well. Jennifer, did you have something to add?
I wasn't sure if you said at the beginning, the reason why we originally built this was the district set a goal that every student would have a one-to-one connection with a staff member every week. So this was originally built to track that, to see, are we succeeding? And now that it's not being required for all schools, are not required to log their contacts in Synergy, it's we can't really track the success. But at least the schools that are using it are able to track their success toward that goal.
Is there a requirement for those schools that aren't using it to have their own way of presenting if they're meeting that goal? Just kind of from an accountability standpoint.
I believe they're supposed to be providing something to the ILEDs.
Gotcha.
We know we can't just go and pull each of their individuals and try to add it to this. So we were able to get the backing to only say we would only provide a dashboard for what was in Synergy, hoping people will see these awesome dashboards that Robbie's built and then be like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. We should go and put it into Synergy.
Right. It's like, what kind of leverage is there to like get more systemic use of the tool?
Yeah.
It's like, this is the easiest way to be able to report out. Yeah.
Yeah, we had actually messaged to all our staff that they were required to use Synergy. And then because there was so much pushback, people caved.
Lots of head nods. Yeah.
Yep, people caved. And I cried. And then Robbie cried. And then we rallied.
Can relate. Yeah. Well, isn't Synergy new for you guys too? So they're learning the new SIS while being required to use it.
Yep. Yeah, last year was our first year in Synergy. And so we know how that went. And then, of course, right after we announced this awesome tool in Synergy, it broke. And so it wasn't available for a little while too, which was another problem. And so it was just all those epic fails right in a row. And
so a quick question about how you've been communicating with the ILEDs about this. Do they use any of this in any of their discussions with principals and schools?
That's a good question. We haven't, Katie, do you know?
I would think, so like we know a big user of it and a big supporter of using it is our principal at Sylvester. And so I think his ILED does. Some of our other ILEDs themselves were the ones not supporting using Synergy. So no, they have probably created their own things to track it.
Yeah. So I think in that kind of situation, what I personally would do is, all right, you always find your advocate and kind of use your advocate to spread the word, to become some type of an evangelist, because they're obviously having some kind of success with the thing that you built. So whoever that one person is, kind of use them as your conduit for the other teams. That's, again, what I would do. You've probably already tried that, but again, that's what I would do.
Yeah, I like that idea, Robbie. We should probably check in with that ILED and see how it's going for them and see what else we could maybe do for them.
And we did have like cabinet support. So we had Kisa on board with it to try and do the communication out to schools. So there was that level of involvement. But yeah, we could work more towards like, hey, we're using this as a school. We're using this tool. It's working for us in terms of communication.
Yep. And you don't even need to mention the other schools that aren't using it or anything. You can just kind of start with a success measure. And then, influence based on that. Again, just some input.
Yeah, Dave Ogden with the attendance data combining with it, that'd be an interesting view. We do have different attendance views with student lists available to admin and counselors and deans. So they're able to see which students are at like highest risk. They have either the highest chronic absenteeism rate or the lowest average daily attendance rate. So they're able to pull a list of those students and reach out that way. But it'd be interesting to combine the two data sources in some way.
Yeah, I was thinking about how often we as schools just kind of use and put up on our dashboards any of the demographic data that we have that's available. And I'm wondering if some of it doesn't really matter, depending on which ones people want to see. Sometimes everybody says, oh, I want to see it all. And I was like, really? What are you going to do with some of those things? Wouldn't you rather see if it was connected to something else rather than their demographic data?
Yeah, we do usually have a request for demographic data. So that's why we include it in most of our dashboards.
Just in terms of real estate, wondering if
Yeah.
2 or 3 of those could drop out and be replaced with something else.
Yeah, from a style perspective, some of people, like you hear, I hear sometimes about like not wanting to have a million filters on there. So what we started doing, I know Brian's done this too in Renton, is you can use a floating container. You can have a hide show button for it, and then you just throw all your random one-off filters in that floating container, and then you can hide it. So then you just have like a big button that says like show more filters or whatever, and you click it and the floating container pops up, so it looks cool. It's less functional, but it looks a lot better.
It helps a lot, if we're being honest. I mean, I did that with some of our files, and because we have different principals who care about different things and will ask for different things. And we got to the point that there was one dashboard where literally about a third of the real estate was just different filters that different principals had all asked for, because we need to see it this way, we need to see it that way, they need to see it. And just putting it into one button and making it really clear. It's all of them, they have the button in the exact same spot, always in the upper right hand corner. And so now I use virtually no real estate on my filters rather than buckets.
That's brilliant.
It's super helpful.
Yeah,
I think
into that.
They added it only like a year and a half ago, I want to say. I feel like it was right after, Nick abandoned us. So,
I abandoned you a long time ago.
I don't remember how long anything is. Time is an illusion. I cut myself off before the swear. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what's nice about that is a lot of people want the demographic filters, but they don't actually use them in practice very
Yes.
often. They just want them there.
Discussions about that and how many we want to include, and it's come back and forth, and we've gotten like a lot of strong feedback of no, it has to be on there, but being able to put it on there without it having so much real estate would be really nice.
Yeah, when we started doing it, we still have a couple that will sit out on each dashboard, but they're really, I think, consistently school and grade are the ones that we have sitting out that we know people are using all the time. Even depending on the dashboard, we have the demographics and some of the program data in that show more filters area. So if people are interested and want to go and do that, they can. The one thing I just remind people as I'm showing them in training is that you need to remember what you picked, because once you hit hide filters, it goes away, and you just need to remember, wait, what group of students am I looking at? But from a real estate perspective and functionality, like it really cleans things up.
We'll definitely be looking into that.
You're like, everybody, you can get your filter. It's just in this box over here.
Yes.
Can we see? I see David is willing to share a screen example of it. Can we see it? If we're done. Sorry.
I'm fine.
Katie's like, I'm tired of looking at our stuff.
Somebody else throw something up.
I've seen other things.
Oh,
I love that.
yeah, I like it.
Ours is really similar to that.
Yeah.
So pretty.
Mhm. I like it. And then we could customize more when we have individual schools request things, or be able to throw those in, like the housing and stuff like that. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, the discipline one is the one that I was referring to, because there's so many things that people ask for about, like, oh, I also want to be able to filter by offense type. I want to be able to filter by location, all those things. So like you click on the show filters, it takes up literally about half the screen now. And then just makes life easy.
Like it.
I would still say it's funny, we've been trying to have the conversations where like, how do you still try to minimize what's there? And if you can't kind of push somebody away from that or have that conversation about like, do you really need that? What are you going to do with it? You still try to have those conversations too and balance it out so it's not 100 filters there, but it's nice to know it's an option. And we know our list of just must-haves has gotten longer, so.
Yeah, over and above this being something for visibility, also and functionality, this is really an adoption feature. Because when people start to say, okay, how useful is the dashboard that you just created for us and can we actually use it? Things like this make a difference. So I'd encourage the team always to review all the new released features and try them all just to see where we can use those. Because sometimes you're like, oh, that hide filters thing, what's that about? Or creating, you know, the floating menus, what is that about, right? But once you put it in and actually try it a couple of times, that sometimes can mean the difference between somebody using your dashboards and not, which is the ultimate thing that we're trying to get to.
Any other thoughts about student engagement and either the dashboards or any other things that districts are working on or what you're thinking about after seeing what's out there? Things to go back and try.
Sarah, I think in the intros point, you had mentioned that your district was using SELs. I think it was you. It might not have been you. SEL surveys. Could you talk a little bit about that? If that was you.
Yeah, it was me.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we have a couple things. We use panorama surveys a few times a year, but then we're also just added to our portal just a like, how are you doing today thing. And so the kids click on it and they choose an emoji and it goes in, we're using a Google form. And I actually just built the dashboard for that yesterday. And I was super excited that the emojis go through to Tableau and they show up and it's very cool. But let's see I wonder if I can show anything without, most of the data we have is fake data anyway.
We'll put our cell phones away. We won't take any pictures.
This is being recorded though, so I'll say that.
Well, I won't show that. Let me see if I can do it without showing anything. So here, let's see here. So I put it into a Google form and you can connect Tableau to Google Forms automatically. And then I just did a SQL query and I connected them in Tableau. Let's see here. BST.
While Sarah's looking, I want to say that's a great idea. Just like they have in airports with the bathroom and that sort of thing. Just some very simple, quick way to capture things. There's a whole set of research on this, capturing small pieces of data from kids, just making, whether it's just a general statement or whether you want to get, see if something's working for them. And I think that's a nice idea of putting it when they log in.
Yeah, and actually we haven't even gone live with it yet, but we put it on the portal, but we haven't told teachers to tell anybody about it, but we've already got responses, which is kind of cool. I'm just going to remove the names here really quick and then I'll show you guys. And this is like, literally I did this yesterday and it's my first draft and I don't know if this is going to be what we're doing, but sorry.
I also just have to say, I really like your background, Sarah. I think you had it last time too, but still A+.
This is my Zoom one. This is what I use when I'm talking to people at schools. All right.
Sarah didn't know she was our third presenter today. We just decided to just bring that on her right now.
Prepared for this. So we're going to.
And since we have our team site too, some of the new users might need to be added to that, but I know we can take some screenshots of what we have and redact things and post them so we can share with the group too.
Here, I'm just gonna remove the whole individual. Okay, so because it's wigging out when I'm trying to move just the names. All right. So, so what I did was we have the survey that just has they pick an emoji, and these are the emojis here. And this is still in desktop right now, but I will publish it. But I have the date the survey was completed, and I merged it, like I said, with a SQL query that has information from our SIS. And then I was trying to decide what to do for the scale. So I assigned our happy star smiley face a 10, smiley face a 5, neutral 0, -5, and -10. And then I kind of averaged them so that you could see, you know, people were doing great on this day, but it was only one entry. And then we've got 3 entries on this day. And so far I've got it by day. And then what I did is right below here, I had the individual responses reverse sorted by when they were entered so that they can look and see who's doing it. And then I have it set so it like this will filter the other things out. And, you know, if you wanted to just see how often people said they were awesome, they could use those filters. This is kind of just a conglomerate of everybody and what they chose. So anyway, this is just my draft, but it's just, like I said, a quick Google form that just says, how you doing? Pick an emoji. And it feeds in pretty well.
And so then the students, do they see this like by default, like when they log in then, or like how again is this like shown to the students so that they can like quickly pick it?
So let me see. I don't think the portal has anything that you guys can't see. So we're about to launch a new portal, and we've already launched it, but we're gonna turn off the old portal over break. But so when they log in, this is all their stuff. We have a custom built portal, and it just has this right here. And it's just a link, and you just pick an emoji. And it automatically, because they've logged into the portal already, it's got their login already in there. So that way I can match the SIS. So that's what we've got. And so it just shows it there. And like I said, we haven't had the teachers encourage it or anything, but we've already had kids see it and answer.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, how big can Google Forms end up handling? Because you know that's hypothetically like every student every day giving a response, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
I guess we'll find out with this.
Yeah, cool.
You know, and what I might do is you know, because this feeds into a Google Sheets, which is what I'm pulling from. So what I might do is just after every so often switch it to a new Google Sheet and then aggregate them together. But we'll see. We'll see if we run into problems.
Do your teachers have access to your dashboards?
Right now, they have access to, so I have 3 kind of tiers of access. We have the full access people. We have the partial access, which is access to almost everything, but not sensitive stuff like, the free or reduced lunch and that kind of stuff. And then I have the all access, which is stuff that I could put public if I wanted to, like the, demographics and that kind of stuff. And so technically our teachers could access those ones. I have just a handful. They don't know that they can access it right now, but they could if they wanted to. We have the logins set up, but right now it's just our principals, APs, deans.
Yeah, same. I was just thinking about this. Like, I appreciate how simple it is and a quick, like, kind of temperature check on like how your class or your school's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, like, it's one thing for the principal to have that. It's another thing for the teacher to be able to see their students and be able to adjust or talk about it. And we're not there either. Our teachers don't have access. So just thinking about what this would look like if we did something similar.
Yeah. And we could, this is just like, they just started doing this after winter break, we just launched it. And so I think we're going to kind of see how the principals like it. And I'm sure that that'll be the next question is, can my teachers have access to this? So
you can see it coming.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be the next one. But and this one, because it's just, how are you feeling? Like, I probably should be able to do that, but we'll just take it as it goes.
Thanks, Sarah. That was
Thanks for sharing.
great.
Anything else on student engagement? Otherwise, we'll start to transition over to non-traditional data sources, which we kind of have in a way. Some of this is non-traditional in itself, so it's all connected. Okay, so this part is a more informal discussion just of what's happening and getting a sense of where this group is when it comes to non-traditional data sources. So I am going to share my screen again, and we're going to do get some information through Menti to just start some discussion about this topic. So I will slowly share my screen again. Okay, so it's the same code as before. If you see Menti open, it will go to next. You can keep it open because there's a few questions, but this question is asking, what, if any, non-traditional data sources have you used? And it allows for multiple responses. So you could put multiple things in one choice, or you could put in each data source separately. And we're pretty broad with that definition of non-traditional data source.
What counts as non-traditional? Trying to think of.
They were keeping it really broad, like it's not student data, like not attendance, behavior, grades, those things that we use all the time. So it could be, yeah, survey data, other things you're collecting in Google Forms, HR, finance, pulling in separate sources from like census data or some other source.
Who said the third one, though? We have parse data for mapping. Out of curiosity. Oh,
Yeah, a lot of
That's Renton.
and did
Renton.
you manually do that, like every day run through a handful of parcels, or do you pay
I'll
money?
let Brian speak to that.
We paid someone the exorbitant rate of $17.
It's rough, man.
Yeah. I basically went to John and said, if the district won't pay for this, I will, because I do not want to deal with looking these up anymore.
You're like, here's $20, make it go away.
Can you put a little more detail there, Brian, for others?
I just found there's a site that we could set it up to be automated so that we would upload all of our data, all of our parcel data once a week. I forget what it's called. I can go through my email and find the place. And they would charge us like a monthly fee or whatever. But they also have, if you have an account, you can do a quote unquote, one-time or ad hoc version where they charge you based on the number of addresses you need to look up. And it literally translated to like every 100 addresses was 50 cents, I want to say. It was something like that. Maybe every 1,000. I forget the exact numbers, but it was, again, every address that we had in our address master came out to, like I said, it was $17. So if you need me to, I can definitely find the name of the company.
I know we have something similar. We use a Google service. Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, we use Google because they let you do a certain number for free every day, but they have to have like a card on file, like in case you do more than they'll charge you, right? So Mark, one of our coworkers, wrote something that is like the top 200 ones that aren't, that don't have a lot long, right? Send it over to Google, and
Yeah.
so it's pretty slick.
We thought about doing that, but it was one of those things that we just wanted to get everything updated quickly. And
yeah, and we did it.
That's why we sold Touchdown's card.
Yeah. All those Amazon purchases were,
Yeah, what's been really helpful about having those lat longs for every parcel or address is then we can use the mapping capabilities in Tableau to show where students are. So without that, it's probably still possible, but a lot harder. And we have had, we're in the middle of a boundary change right now and an analysis that went along with that. So we were getting a lot of questions about, which students are where, how would the boundaries impact them? So being able to have that lat long data was crucial to being able to help support that. Does anybody else do anything with the mapping feature in Tableau? Use that. Sean's wondering what happened to his credit card.
What you just said, Ashley, is literally that's coming up for us next year. We're going to have to do some new boundary drawing because we're opening a new elementary school, and that was actually one of the reasons we first got all that data, was so that we could draw some like practice ideas before we started mapping other things.
If anyone's gotten the mapping to work in Tableau, I'd be interested to see it too, because I've messed with it. Like we use Guide K-12, so we have that, but I've messed with it in Tableau, but I've not really gotten it to be very useful outside of like zip code and, stuff like that. Like I haven't got the boundaries to work very well, so I'd be interested to see it if anyone's gotten it to work.
Could you clarify what you mean by like got it to work? Are you talking like mapping for individual students? Are you talking about getting like your boundaries uploaded? Like,
yeah, getting the boundaries uploaded and being able to map things with the boundaries.
so what we had to do for actually having our boundaries available was we actually went through King County GIS, their office, and they drew the maps for us. So we have a shape file we can connect to if we need to do anything with boundaries. We haven't used, it's funny, we actually haven't used the boundaries a ton. We do a lot more of like actual individual students lat-long locations. And then we'll do things like we make Hex Bin Maps for attendance so we can sort of see where our attendance is worse. But we do more of that. But if you contact a GIS company, they can get you your boundaries drawn up. And as David points out, in one of the upcoming releases, probably 2021.2 or 3, they're going to have map layers. So it will be a little bit more effective. Like we can have the shapefile and the lat longs together. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you actually already can have the shapefile and the lat long in there, but it's really hacky because you have to like make it like a dual axis map. It's really weird. And then they can't interact with each other. And that's the problem, is like you would hope that, you know, like, okay, I got a dot for a student who lives right here and they're inside, you know, the Kent Ridge boundaries. So I click on Kent Ridge and it would highlight these kids. No, can't do that. You know, like that's you know the lacking technology that we hoped for. But we've been doing some like workarounds with that. But like the way that I was able to do some of that stuff was just by like having every student's path, you know, like knowing, so Kent Ridge is this number, and then I know which like students are associated with that, you know, stuff like that. So it's not as intuitive as you'd hope for. But I totally forgot about hex bins though. I gotta try that again. Yeah, let me see if I can find a video of that. Do you have a guide on how to make hex bins, Brian?
Somewhere I do. It was one of those physical books that Tableau gave, because they still are, for a technology company, adamant against ever giving you like anything you can plug into your computer. But if you Google Hex Bin mapping, the only part that gets tricky is remembering that you have to scale it, and the scaling gets kind of weird because our districts are so small relative to the country as a whole. But all it is it's Hex Bin X, Hex Bin Y, and then your inputs are latitude times a multiplier, longitude times a multiplier, and then you divide everything by that same multiplier. So it's you have to use the like a parameter to really hone in on what you need, but that's all it is. And then make sure that when you add them to the field or to the view, you're adding the actual value of the Hex Bin Y and Hex Bin X. You're not adding like an average or a sum, because that'll just completely do away with anything. Does everyone know what we mean by Hex Bin maps and everything?
Do you want to show?
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I can quickly, like, I can show you our attendance one really fast.
Think the shape like a hexagon. Yeah, and I think just Tisha was saying, we use our shape files. Edgelog, which is our transportation system, has those and is able to export them out for us, and we're able to then put those into Tableau. So like Nick said, we have this map that has the boundaries on it so you can see it, but it's not interacting with the other data that we might layer on.
And then the other fun one we had in terms of that was we had a shapefile with the locations of our schools. But the people who made it didn't put the proper underlying data in. So while things showed up, 2 of our schools, they didn't put in the lat longs. So when you actually do the calculations to make them show up, the schools show up out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
That's where they are, right?
Exactly. Everyone who goes to Sartori literally has to get on a plane and then a boat. That's what happens.
It's remote learning.
Yeah, exactly.
It's our remote site.
Actually, our school for advanced mutants.
So, Ashley, do you mind if I share my screen really fast? Just to show
Yeah, go
you?
ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you should just be able to take over from me.
I can, but it says it'll take away from you, and I want to be polite.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So this is the Hex Bin Map. So you can see, we've got 71 students who live in that little area. And the reason they're not hexagons is because hexagon is not a default shape. And this way we can add color to them because we're lazy. But yeah, my mouse is so dead. But literally, like I said, it's just those simple calculations of hex bin X, hex bin Y. And if you look up Hex Bin Map on Google, you'll find the directions of how to do it really, really quick. So, and then you can also, again, the other thing is since it's grouping people together, you can also size based on the number of students living in a location. So.
I'm going to go back and share some of what was coming up on the Menti again. Let me do. One of the things that was coming up was using Google Forms a lot. I'm just wondering, when you're asking like a multiple choice question or have some choices, like it's pretty easy to deal with in Tableau, but are you taking in actual like narrative or qualitative data and being able to do anything with that? Is anybody doing that?
We've done a little bit, but once you get more than a certain number of responses, it's really hard to do anything with it. Like we did our parent survey and I put it into Tableau, one of our earlier parent surveys. And what I ended up having to do was we had some multiple choice, and multiple choice are kind of a pain in Google Forms because it puts it all into one, thing. So I had to create a variable for each option to make it and say, if this cell contains this text, then, then yes, or whatever, to make all the different options so that I could actually do something with it in Tableau. But with the open-ended stuff, I did put it in there so that people could kind of glance through it, but it is kind of harder to manage. It's easier to send that in a spreadsheet or something, but people can still read through it. But I did a little bit of coding where I tried to say if the gist of it was this idea, then I kind of made another column that had, okay, if they mentioned this, then I said yes, and that kind of thing. But that's a lot of manual work.
Yeah, there are other tools out there that are meant to do that better.
Yeah. Tableau does a lot better with the yes, no, multiple choice type stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of outside of the scope of Tableau, thinking about some of those non-traditional data sources that are more like heavy text-based and what you do with them. Because we've had some open-ended surveys too. And it's like, well, somebody needs to code these responses, right? And get some themes and do all of that. And, well, wait, is one person going to sit here and code all of these? Or I think one of the things that we're thinking about right now is, yes, during these like remote learning, we're using a lot of like surveys and getting that kind of open-ended information. Is that something we're going to do long-term? And if it is, do we need to buy something else that will help with that process of coding those open-ended responses, if that's something that we're invested in doing long-term? So outside the scope of Tableau, but something data-related we're thinking about.
Yeah, I know. We have there was an internal survey tool that we had that was created in Kent a long time ago, from what I understand. And we had that same problem with, some of these multiple select things all getting shoved into like one cell, right? It was just really fun. But
And of course, they always send out the survey and then ask you to analyze it. They don't ask you to help design how the survey is.
yeah, oh yeah.
Hey,
never
that has changed.
experienced that. that has changed. Yeah, so Ashley is very involved now, and we use SurveyMonkey, which lets us. It makes the data sort of super long. There'll be like 100 columns. Like there was one that had like a lot of the Likert scale questions, and I swear it was like 200 columns. But just a little bit of cleaning and a massive pivot in Tableau makes it a lot more manageable, and a lot less of that manual like contained language. Like that's not fun. I feel your pain.
Who said something about the help desk to get data? Look at those ones, and also the internet browsing.
Those are both me.
Oh.
Yeah, we have a help desk ticket. I saw what Dave said about adding SIS data, and that would be interesting. We haven't done that yet, but it might be especially interesting this year now that we've had more student tickets. Because traditionally our help desk has been more supporting staff. And this year with all the remote learning, we've started supporting students more when the teachers are at a loss. But so we just have, we have a dashboard that just kind of shows what kind of tickets we're doing, what kind of things we're dealing with. So that way we can kind of say, okay, do we need to do a training on something, or, what can we help our help desk people not drown?
Yeah, and I was thinking about Connect to SIS, because then you could also figure out who is you helping more or less. Like, are you actually helping the people that need help from other indicators or things of that nature? So that's what I was thinking about it. And then the system that we have gives them data they can look at, but it only shows them in one way. So they only think about it in one way.
That would be interesting. And I was thinking when you said that, I was like, oh, it would be interesting to look at, are we mostly helping older kids, or are we helping, how are those things kind of coming in? Or are we helping younger kids, or are there certain schools where the kids are having a harder time? Or that might be interesting to look at.
And then you can lay a map on it to see who should be driving where.
There we go.
Who should be driving where? These two are on the way.
Yeah.
That's something that I wish was a lot easier to calculate, was like the driving distance between two lat longs, because that costs money to do, to run through Google. But if you just calculate as the crow flies, you can, that's the distance formula. You can calculate that. So,
well, the analytics link that I put before, there's some features in there that I've never used, but about getting radius, like how far out. That's currently in the 2020.2 or 3. That might help. So here's how many are in this map. Here's how many things are in this map area. I think the person also showed how to calculate the distance as well. So there might be some calculations that are actually available. I just haven't ever used them. But it's pretty cool presentations.
We have a few lakes in our district, so it's not always a straight shot. What is the Remind communication data?
That's so Remind, we use Remind for communication. Well, we started using Remind. We started in April, right when we were already going to pilot, and then we went remote, and they were like, we're not going to pilot anymore. We're just doing it. So we did it, and Remind just started giving downloads of communication data. So it'll tell you, who's been engaged and who's sent messages, and if they've responded and that kind of stuff. So I pulled it into a dashboard. We haven't really done a lot with it yet, but I have it.
Or is
So
that similar to, do you know if it's similar to Peach Jar or things like that?
it's different because the Peach Jar, goes out to parents, whereas the Remind can go to parents and students, and students can respond back to teachers.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And you can also, with the district enterprise Remind account, teachers and staff can make phone calls to parents and students through Remind without. That's the whole reason we did it, was because they could call without giving out their phone number.
It's like school messenger, but from schools to parents rather than from central to parents.
Yeah, and they can, and the parents and students.
And the parents can respond. Yep.
Yeah. So, so we were interested in kind of who's engaging that way and who's responding back. It's one of the things I want to work into our digital engagement dashboard that I haven't built yet. And then you asked about securely too. I started just like throwing stuff in here. Sorry.
Like half of these are Sarah's.
Nobody was answering, so I just started putting stuff in. The securely data has been interesting to look at too, because the reason they wanted it was to see who was using our online platforms, like what kids were actually going to. And because, with all this, we're trying to like streamline what we're using. So all I've done so far is just looked at the domains and who's gone to what domains and what the top ones are, and then looked for specific domains to kind of see who's going to them. And we have that through, their Chromebooks. Anytime they're signed in with their district account, it'll track where they go. So, I mean, YouTube's one of the top ones.
Yeah.
And Netflix.
So is YouTube blocked, or do you guys let the students use YouTube?
It's allowed but restricted.
Okay.
Because some of our teachers use YouTube for stuff.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, Ashley or Tashawn could speak more to this, but I think that was a hurdle that we had earlier where we had restricted access to YouTube, but the teachers were like sending out YouTube links with like, hey, watch this history lesson, you know, and then like certain kids, like the kids who had our hotspots, couldn't watch the YouTube video, It's like, that's not good.
Yeah.
I don't know all the inner workings of that.
Hey, I don't know what our rules are, like what the actual restrictions are, but I know it's restricted because I know my kids complain about it. And I know we have teachers that complain about it, but I know it's allowed.
We've had similar discussions about some of that browsing data and looked at some add-ons, and I think it's helpful because you have the Chromebooks. So it's like basically everybody's using Chrome, and that's like the limitation of some of these things and that's our preferred browser. So most people are using it, but and using it to kind of answer some of those same questions. What are they going to? And are they going to the like curriculum and other programs that we have approved, or are they going somewhere else? So it's kind of a student and a teacher part too. Like this hasn't been approved or this has been denied, but this is still being used, and to understand, not from a punitive standpoint or anything, but just to understand what's happening out in schools and are they using the recommended and approved tools of the district. So it's a good reminder. I am going to move us to the next question just for the sake of time here. So it is, what barriers have you encountered when it comes to using non-traditional data sources? You may have talked through some of them, but.
Well, I'll just speak really fast to the Google Forms. In general, it's been, is this over entering? Never mind. Sorry. I'm shutting up.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk too.
I've heard my voice too much. I'm going to be quiet.
Seeing some themes emerging here. Also, my laptop's blocking part of my screen that has these, so I can't see the ones that are on the left side. So. Before we start diving into any of those, I know that there's some of us that can talk about this, these topics all day, and we know there's some other people that are new to the group or have different levels of experience with Tableau. So if you have a chance and want to give some feedback about what you're hearing, if it's helpful, if there's something else that we should be talking about, feel free to do that. You can drop it into the chat too. We just want to make sure that, there's a few of us that can definitely take over. So we want to make sure we're hearing everybody's voices. Or I can take the fact that you're still here, so you're getting something from it, right?
I have to be here.
No, but yeah, please drop in the chat to help give us direction.
Thank you for the people in the chat there. I know sometimes it's just kind of collecting information and figuring out what you might be able to do with it later. So there seem to be a few themes as I'm quickly scrolling, and you can see here too. One is around IDs and not having unique IDs to be able to link data together, or having different IDs and all of that. Nobody wants to spend all their time manually matching data when you have tens of thousands of kids. And some about the format of what, how data comes out. Is it multiple lines per student? Is it one row per student? What is it? And then cleanup and I would say poor quality, like some validity questions, like how accurate is this? I think that many of us take for granted what's in our SIS, and that we know that there's still some, it's probably not 100%, but we can say with a high level of certainty that we have trust in that data versus something you might get from a Google form or something from some other source that you're not as familiar with. So any of those that are particularly resonating or want to dig into deeper? Or just general commiseration that everybody's encountering similar barriers.
Yeah, just a plug for Tableau Prep. If because you have the same headings and fields, if they have like spelling and all this sort of stuff, Tableau Prep is some very good tools to help clean your data.
Speaking of that, and this may be an offline thing, if you're using PowerSchool and using Tableau Prep or an Oracle database and using Tableau Prep, I'm having issues connecting all of a sudden. And so if anyone, I'd be curious if anyone else is having issues if you are using that, message me.
I'll send you the name of my contact at Tableau, who's actually in charge of Tableau Prep. You might be able to get a response from her.
I was going to say, I started a ticket with them and they haven't responded. It's been like 3 days.
Yeah, Sometimes
So-
if you go to the person you know who is in charge of Tableau prep, they can direct you to the right people.
And it was working, and then all of a sudden it's saying the driver's not working, but it's still there, and it works from Tableau, but not from Tableau prep. And anyway, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, one of the things with the non-traditional data sources that I find that I sometimes struggle with is working with data sources that aren't student related, whether it's a finance. Recently for Kent, we've been trying to dive into our finance HR data, and a lot of times working with student data, you know, if it's some outside source that we're getting, like we know what like it should be, right? So like it's like, oh, we gotta like filter it down to this, and you know, like, okay, we'll aggregate this field, we'll pivot it, or whatever it is, right? And we can get it correct. But with, you know, staring at some of that HR data, oh my goodness, I'm like, I don't know what's right. You know, so I'm like, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, why do I have 5 rows for the 2021 school year? Like me, you know, and it's like, which one's the right row? Or like, are they all right? Is it, you know, so like that's kind of the some of the struggles that we've had is working with some of that that data. So I'm curious if anyone here has, you know, moved from the student side of things to try to work on like their HR, finance, or one of those sides of things.
We have, but only for account creation scripts and things like that. I haven't done any analysis with that, but I've had some of the same issues.
Yeah, and it's like one of the things, like I find it's very it's intuitive to like aggregate things to 1 row per student per school year type of level. Like, you know, a discipline might have multiple rows per student. Attendance grades will have multiple rows per student. It's very easy to say number of hours per school year, attendance rate per school year, number of whatever's per school year, right? And then you can have the more in-depth data sources too, but then you also have your nice clean aggregated one. And we've probably had this conversation 3 or 4 times where like, okay, we want to aggregate our staff data to like a 1 row per fiscal year type thing. What do we put in it? And we're just like, I don't know. You know, and like, but it would be really powerful to answer these questions, but we just haven't been able. It's been a really big hurdle for us to go through. So we're working on it as a team. We have a lot of eyes and ears on it, but it's, you know, it's not student data, right?
Yeah, we've run into that too. And trying to meet with the HR people about how the data goes in to try to figure out how to pull it out can be a little bit challenging just to get time to do that and for them to understand what you're trying to do. Do you use Skyward for your, what do you use for your HR system?
Yeah, we use Skyward. We're a Skyward district.
So do we. And I had the exact same problem where I get like 10 rows for the single school year and I can't totally figure it out. I figured out some of it. I got it mostly narrowed down, but it's weird how they have it structured.
Are you guys like running your own reports out of Skyward, or are you talking with people over in HR how they run their reports? Because we haven't actually done it yet, but we had talked about potentially doing some HR stuff, and we made it clear pretty early on that like we don't know the HR side, and we would need them to at least build the initial reports.
That'll probably be smart. We have access to the back end because, you know, we can see like the back end of a lot of these tables and stuff. So like we're able to like, you know, throw some stuff together. But no, we did not ask them to create the reports themselves.
Yeah. Well, and part of our issue is that we don't have anybody on the HR side that can write SQL or anything like that. So we have people that could make make a report in Excel for us, but then you're talking about manually updating everything, you know, so, and they don't know the database part in terms of pulling it from SQL. They just know the UI. So there's that too. So when I've tried to I met once with one of our HR people to just try to figure out how the data goes in to try to guess how the database is set up so that I can pull data out, but that's as far as I've gotten with that.
Yeah, one of the ways that we're approaching at least the conversation is by treating it like a process review. to
Mhm.
ask the question of, so when you hire an employee, what fields do you use in Skyward? Then, when there's an employee change, where do you put that change at? So rather than asking a very basic question about all the data, it's more of some general questions, and that starts to help. But yeah, we're still running into some problems with time and also them understanding why we're trying to do it. We're not trying to automate you out of a job. We're not trying to change all your reports. It's more along the lines of we're trying to answer some questions that you asked us for recruiting, for retention, aligned strategic goals, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we're lucky, one of the people that's part of our larger data team, Michelle, I don't think she's here today, but she's been in past meetings, has some background with HR. So we're able to go to her to ask some questions about what does this mean or how can we get this? And she can get some reports. But then when it comes to those, oh, we need to fix the process or whatever, then that's where we need to go talk to HR, and it gets out of our realm a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go to the last question really quick because it's related. And are there any questions you can't currently answer that would use a non-traditional data source? If you have some questions that you can't answer, but it would use a traditional data source too, throw those in there. This is a space where maybe somebody else has asked that question as well or figured out how to make it work or whatever it might be. No outstanding questions. We can solve everything. I can't multitask right now and enter a response as I have it showing, but the one thing I'm thinking about is kind of anything where we're depending on a survey and we know not everybody's answering, like we're just doing our best guess at percentages. One thing that came to mind was you're asking like, what percent of your students have access to internet? It's like, well, we can ask them through a survey and we kind of know they're on a computer, but I don't actually know, like from a student by student level. And anything that we're asking through a survey where we don't get 100% response rate, like can't really fully answer the question.
I can second the API thing. Was that David? Yeah. I was just telling my boss I need to get better at using APIs.
When you figured out, move back to this side of the sound.
Tell us all what to do.
Work for Renton.
I'm going to say I need David to not want to know how APIs work so that I don't have to do any learning.
I don't know what it is. I've tried some and some. I know there's something that's just going to make it click, or I'll understand how they work and be able to use them well. But I'm not quite there. I can kind of use them, but I need to get better at it.
Yeah, this first one about how much time students spend on schoolwork each day. Yeah, we're making some leaps based on what we have access to. I mean, it's hard to measure student engagement, and we didn't have a good handle on that when students were in the classroom, let alone when they're remote. And like, well, they showed up to the meeting. I guess that means something. COVID data. As students come back into schools too, there's some requests to have some data available. It could be in dashboards about cases and all of those pieces, and health screenings, and how are we capturing that?
That's what Brian's working on now. Or will be
Like,
soon. All the screening data and all that sort of stuff.
It's terrible. I'm tired of being told I'm killing everyone. Nick knows what I mean.
Is anyone here from Auburn? So my wife is a nurse in Auburn, and I know that they have wellness screenings. They actually have a handful of students that are already going back. It's like the special education students, but they have like a wellness screening that I'm pretty sure they do in Skyward, and then they can see which students didn't fill out their wellness screening, right? And then you got to call the family, right? And it's a whole massive process. And they only have 5-10 kids back, right? That are only there every other day. So I'm just curious, because if it's all done in Skyward, you can get the data out of it and all that stuff. That's something that could be a dashboard, could be scalable, right? It could be something that updates more than once a night, right? But it's just I'm not working for them, so I don't really know.
I think our plans are to use what's in Skyward, from what I've heard too, that we will be using what they have in place. We just don't have any kids back to screen.
In Highline, Robbie's also working on a COVID dashboard, and she's getting the data from our head nurse, who compiles the cases for her. And it's categorized by, is it a student? Is it staff? What school building are they at? Did they acquire it outside or from a contact within the district? And how many close contacts did they have? And Robbie's just getting ready to publish that as an outward facing dashboard on our website.
Is that the spreadsheet that was shared with nurses by King County Department of Health?
I'm not sure what format that she's using. Robbie decided to reshape it to work better in the dashboard, but yeah, it's having to be manually updated.
Well, because that's the spreadsheet that I was given to work with. Yay, good times. Unfortunately, because we don't locally host our SharePoint, the reason my camera was off for the first half of this thing was I was sending a long list explaining that this spreadsheet looks fine, but we can't do anything. We can't connect. So we're having some connection issues, which is a new experience. I haven't had connection issues in a long time. But all that said, if that is the spreadsheet that Robbie is working with, I would love to see what you guys are doing and how you guys are getting that up.
Sure. Yeah. You can email us.
See one more on here about schools doing things on paper. And yes, I wasn't even thinking about that. Talk about all the things of, if they have to capture that somewhere, but it's not here. So where is it? Is it on a Post-it note on their desk? Is it an Excel file on their desktop? Like even thinking back to Highline's presentation saying, not everybody's using the SIS to enter that contact information. So, I mean, at least it might be electronic, but there are some cases where things are still hard copies. So hard to create a dashboard from that.
And just to plug again, say those who are less noisy, or less talkative, all of us want to help you get better. I know Brian just said, Jennifer just said, email me. And I was going to say, Jennifer emails right back. She's great. So instead of typing that in, yeah, just feel free to contact any of us for answer some of your Tableau questions.
Yeah, no secrets in any of the stuff that we're doing. We share often, so we learn. Doesn't help us if we're the only ones that have dashboards. So we're getting towards the end of our time. I wanted to do something fun and different. So I have a little trivia quiz for us to go to, and I'll be sending a prize to our winner here. So there's some general knowledge, there's multiple choice, you know, just changing it up a little bit. So it's not all, well, there's kind of some data questions in there, but you know, we're doing something different. So we'll go through and do that real quick, and then we'll wrap up and talk about our usual process of collecting feedback and thinking about when we want to do this again. So this is all through Menti, so if you have it open. And like I said, I'll be downloading the responses from Menti and posting it to our team site. So if there's anything that people want to go back and look at, or some contacts in there. All right, we have some people in here. There's 6 people in here. I know there's more people in the meeting, so I'm not going to start until we have more people than that in there. You have some good chances of winning with only 6.
Can I edit my image?
I'm the hearts. I like
I don't.
mine.
I don't know.
I got
And
the
aloha, everybody. I want to show it's Aloha Friday. So
It's Casual Friday.
Hi, guy.
Yeah,
All right, we're getting
it's-
some more people in here.
Yeah, it's definitely as Casual Friday. That's why I'm wearing a hoodie and pajama pants. I don't wear a hoodie and pajama pants every day for the past 11 months.
I'm sure you're wearing ties all the time, Nick.
Oh yeah.
Like, today's a special day. I've got on my nice hoodie.
Hey, I did put on a different hoodie than I wore yesterday.
Good job. All right, we have 12 in here. It says we have 14 participants. I think I'm one of those. So I don't know who the one person is, but we'll go ahead and get started. So
you can't win if you don't play.
right, I am ineligible. All right, here we go.
Oh, we don't type it in? Oh, here we go.
We got 2 people here got this one right. You know, you had a 25% chance of getting it right. Let's see how we got here. Nick and Jennifer, there are 2 that got that one right.
Nice.
Nick, fastest volcano. Great. All right, we go to the next question here. I was curious how this one would turn out. I'm from California, so. Let's see what happened here. Jennifer is now in the lead. We have some other people up on the board here. David, the fastest right there. I should have made the countdown faster, give them more time or less time to answer. Man, do people have time to Google or they just know this stuff? This is our crowd. I was Joanna, fastest on that one. Jennifer, still in the lead.
I think my internet's slow.
Blame my internet provider for this.
The number I thought it was wasn't even an option. So,
That's a luck of the draw. I was
what
in a
number do you
meeting
think it
that had
was,
this
Nick?
question. It's
I
like,
thought it was like 2016 or 2015.
it seems like it was recent and like, oh, I've been doing this for this long.
Well, it's when it went public. Not,
Yeah, not when it was created.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ooh.
Lizzie is taking over the lead here. We got some change up on that one. All right, a few more questions here. I think this might be my favorite question that's on here. People are going to see if they have enough time to Google the answer. Like, yes, one of
Well,
these
no,
is
no, the strategy is just to click one really fast and hope it's the right answer.
oh, look, there's some intel
lot of
out there.
people knew
People
that.
know.
That one just seemed the most ridiculous.
I actually knew it was Horatio.
Did you?
Sailors, they're sailors.
It's got Magellan in it. It kind of makes Oh, are we switching up again?
Lizzie keeps the
Lizzie's
lead.
holding on to the lead there. It's like the Santa emoji. It's like, somebody needs to like figure out what month it is. All right, just two more questions.
$18.50.
It's been around since the Stone Age.
All of those numbers are the same.
You can find out if Excel's older than you or not.
Yeah, no
I
fair if it's
mean-
older than you.
I mean,
It is.
yeah.
I was born-
All those options are older than me.
Yeah.
Same.
I was, a couple years old. I was jumping into the spreadsheet game early on there.
Oh, Johanna, you're going to pull in the lead here. Boom.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. This
Going right
last
down to the
question is not multiple choice.
Oh,
so,
no. I have to
just-
spell it.
Or you can see how good you are at Googling and how fast you can figure this out. I'm interested to see if anybody has this number ingrained in their head.
Oh, wait, no, that's the number of countries and shit. That's the Olympics.
I saw that was somebody's choice up there. Just one person got it right. Who got? I'm impressed.
Or is that two people?
Yeah, is it two people there? It's two. Then this could be the make or break for the title
cheated.
here.
Oh,
Oh,
there you go.
It's going to give it to Nick.
Yeah, let
Oh.
Joanna win. I looked it up.
You looked it up?
Cheated. I
That's
was
a
like, oh,
cheat
Nick
right
won. Yeah,
there.
there's
You
no
said who's
prize. The prize
fastest to
is
Google it,
revoked.
so I Googled it really fast.
I was faster than you. I didn't have to Google. You got to use your memory, my friend.
Just some of this general knowledge. All right, Nick won. If Nick doesn't want to win, we'll go top two here. Joanna, send me your information and we'll get something out to you too. All right. I was like, I don't want this to seem like it's rigged. Nick works for me. Like,
And Joanna, you and a guest will be able to stay for 3 nights at the wonderful Sheraton, Kent.
like you can work from home for 3 days. No.
Breakfast not included.
Thanks for participating, everybody. Just wanted to do something a little bit different than how we usually end these things.
That was terrific. Thanks.
Yeah. We have a couple minutes left. I'll just say kind of our usual housekeeping at the end of these. Thanks everybody for the conversation today. We usually do these every 3 or 4 months, which puts us, I don't know, April, May, maybe for the next one. So I'll be sending out a form in the next week or so to get some ideas about timing and what works best for the group, and some ideas about topics also. If you have any ideas right now, let me know, or drop them in the chat if we want to continue on with some of the things we were talking about today. But yeah, those would be the next steps. We have a team site where we share some information. If you're not part of that, let me know so I can add you to it. I was trying to add some of the new contacts to that. And yeah, I think that's about all I have. Does anybody else have anything before we hopefully are close to ending your day, if not the end of your day?
Oh, someone posted a question in the Microsoft team about was it row level security? Is that?
Yeah, I asked about that, and it was not in the teams, it was in the other thing, the Tableau
The
forum.
community, yeah, the forum, yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'll sorry, I never got around to answering that, but I can. Are you still wondering about it? Or
Yeah, so our IMS department is going to have to support us on that, and they're not ready to start yet, but I was trying to do some preliminary looking around to see how we could easily implement it. And I was really happy to hear from Ren the idea of start with a few dashboards. We don't have to do it for everything at once. So
yeah. I'll describe what we kind of have. We have like a kind of like a table that's like our permissions table basically, and you join it either based off school or student, and depending on if it's like this, can view school, or like if you're associated with the school or not, right? Depending on what the dashboard is.
Yeah.
Well, I'll write up a response for you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Nick.
And then Brian will reply to your email when you emailed him. He'll tell you about Active Directory and how we include CBOs as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, since I literally am starting to write an email to you and Robbie anyways, if you want to talk about how we do that, I'm happy to add that into any conversation we have.
Awesome.
So you use Active Directory. Do you use Active Directory just to filter who can see which dashboards, or do you actually do row level security with it?
So we do sort of both. We have Active Directory helps us organize who has access to which dashboards, and then we have, like I think I said in the response, we have basically an EWIS, which is top level view, and a student profile page for each grade level that has teacher level access. We don't have anything that's down to like student level, like we can't have students logging in because we don't know how to protect that. But we do have it so that teachers, if they wanted to, can log in and see just their students. And for that, we just have, we just use the fact that everyone's login is based on the Active Directory, and that information is in Skyward. So we just have a file that's like the scheduling file, and it lists what students are rostered to what teacher.
Yeah. So Jennifer, we did try doing that at Highline when I was there, but I think there's some new features in Tableau that make it work better because we had lots of problems with it taking forever to load the dashboards
Okay.
because that mapping file was so big.
Okay.
But
I'll see
it's
if I
probably,
can
I mean,
dig
that was
some of
like
that out.
where I'm old now, and that was like that was like 6 years ago or something. So it's probably better now.
Okay.
Probably easier in Tableau now than it used to be.
That's like Microsoft Excel old.
I know, right? I'm older than Excel. Now I'm like and it was really the people that had district level access that made that file so huge too. So maybe if you
Okay.
didn't have to use that, it might be easier. I don't know.
Good to know.
All right, everyone. I am going to call this meeting ended for today, but it was great seeing everyone again, and we'll plan on doing this in another few months. So look for an email from me soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Ashley.
Yeah.
Bye.